All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. We are so excited to be joined by our friend, Kanika.
All of those
I'm,
things.
I'm so sorry I pronounced it wrong. So great to have you. Happy Wednesday. Just kind of would love to know a little bit about yourself and about your business and kind of tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me and happy Wednesday to you. A little bit about me. So I started in performance marketing a little over a decade ago. So I actually started on the tech side of things. So I was in B2C to B2B to C SaaS for a lot of years. I worked in-house, mostly focusing on the C side of things. So acquisition of our customers. Um, And in those roles, it was always just performance and growth. So I started with paid media, and then I started dabbling in partnerships, affiliate, email, content, organic, like we were talking about earlier, um, partnerships, just kind of everything under the sun there. And there became a point where I fully took over our customer acquisition. And you have to go in front of the board when you are VC backed. And so I would start going in front of the board, and there would be every month you could just report on your metrics, you report on your top line growth, you report on how things are going. And then there was a point where started going to those meetings, and the board members, they'd say, all right, Kanika, thank you for sharing, but we're actually not going to give you any more money. We're also not going to give you any more hires. We're going to raise your goals, and we need you to keep hitting them. I said, all
It's a
right.
story we all know that story. Yes.
Yeah, unfortunately, and no one's ever pumped to hear that, but it's kind of like a oh shit moment, and then like an okay, let me buckle in and see what we can do. Um, and that's when I realized that I had to become as humanly, as humanly possible to be as efficient as possible. So every person that I got to our site, to our pages, I had to be as efficient as possible with them. Every penny I spent, I had to become as efficient as possible. So at that point, I said, okay, how do we do this? How do we become more efficient than what we've been doing? And CRO kind of entered the conversation. And being part of tech, you have more resources. You have kind of a team there. So leadership was sort of like, hey, Kanika, grab whatever developers you need, grab whatever designers you need. You have your marketing team. Go start launching experiments that you think are going to lower our acquisition costs. Go start doing what you need to do. So I said, all right, I kind of don't know how to do this, but let's try it out. And I basically fell in love with it. So just kind of figuring out how to really pull together data. We were an extremely data oriented team. How do I pull together these numbers with sort of this human aspect element of it? How do I involve my design team? How do I involve my copywriters? How do I involve my developers to start making a difference? And we started launching experiments. We would have big brainstorming sessions. We would look at everything together, and our acquisition costs just started plummeting. And so we were able to hit those goals. And then I took what I learned. I joined another company in financial tech. Same thing. I was heading up acquisition. Biggest wins came from putting together storytelling with data to lower acquisition costs by figuring out what's best for our customer. And then I launched Better Growth about 6 years ago now, and we focus fully on conversion rate optimization. And here we are today.
Amazing. Well, Kanika, we are just so thrilled to have you and appreciate your time and expertise. And so, for those who are joining us live, if you could please put your name, where you're joining from, as well as your product or brand in the chat. And then during the presentation, if you have any questions, please go ahead and also put those in the chat, and we'll either answer as we go on the spot on the fly, or we'll save your questions for the end. Okay, great. Well, with that, I'm gonna let you take it away.
Perfect. Sounds good. So I already said a little bit about me. I'm going to then just dive right into our rough agenda for today. I am going to give a lot more detail than what's in these 4 little bullet points, but so you know what you're signing up for by by joining us right now. We're going to start with some myths, some do's, and some don'ts of landing pages. Then from there, we're going to go and talk about why storytelling matters and where to focus. How do you actually use this information once I tell you why it's so important? Then we're going to go directly into how to build. So why it matters, where you should focus, and then how do you put all of this information together to implement it yourself. And then finally, once you launch, what happens next? How do you continue to reap those benefits? How do you continue to get better and better, and hopefully drop those acquisition costs, be able to really scale in the way that you want to grow your company? So let's get into it. All right. For those who are not totally sure what I mean when I say landing page, right? There are a few different definitions. Sometimes when people say landing page, they just mean your entry page, right? And if you use GA4, for example, they have a landing page report. And a landing page report for them, or for that platform, is an entry page. So that just means where people are coming in through. When I talk about landing pages, and if I were to be very specific, I'm going to call them dedicated landing pages. I mean a specific page that is created to guide users through an acquisition journey. And so it's a dedicated page because it is dedicated to a specific campaign, a specific channel, and it is going to be exactly catered to the message preceding it. And the goal of this dedicated landing page is to progress customers through the funnel and towards purchase by creating a cohesive journey, right? You're creating this through line from whatever channel it is, often that's paid social, whatever messaging that includes, and then you're carrying that message, you're carrying that promise really all the way through checkout. And frankly, you're carrying that promise all the way to when they're using your product. And I said this a little bit earlier, but the best way to really do this well is by leveraging a deep understanding of user psychology, customer research, direct response copywriting, and UX UI design. All right. So I said I was going to get into some do nots, some do's, and some myths. So this is a big one I see all the time. Landing pages, CRO, in e-commerce, it's been kind of the hot new topic over the last few years. And one thing that I want to make very, very clear is don't just assume that a landing page is going to work because it's a landing page, right? You hear there's an echo chamber around, and you hear from everyone and their brother and their sister that, hey, just use a landing page and everything's going to be fine. You should definitely try a landing page. It's going to make your business that much better. I agree, you should try it, but it's not a silver bullet, right? A landing page, just like any other marketing tactic, it's a container for a strategy. So you need to dial in that strategy. You need to tweak those tactics, and then you need to find that winning combination. And once you do, yes, that landing page can be the game-changing reason that you scale. Absolutely. I've seen it before. I've helped it happen before. It is 1,000,000% possible, but you have to know how to do it right. And you have to be dedicated to your dedicated landing page to get to the point where it is that magical, not really magical, piece of acquisition marketing tool. All right. I'm just starting with the do nots and the myths. So then the myth, there are certain templates that work for all brands. And if you just copy the design of someone else's winning page, it'll work for your brand too. I wish. That would make life a lot easier, wouldn't it? But unfortunately, even if you do know that a page is winning, which is hard, right? So even if you're going through ads, you get served by a different ad, you go through an email and you click and you get a dedicated landing page, or you go through an ads library and you go and you hit a dedicated landing page. Unless you know that brand personally and they're willing to share their metrics and their performance with you, you have no idea if that's working well for them, right? Because they have it live, maybe they're testing it. Maybe it's actually a losing page right now and they're working towards improving it, right? Maybe they're not even good at measuring success. You have no idea. So just copying in general, there's always just that risk you're taking. But say that you do know that. Say you know that, this dedicated lander that they've been using, it's crushing. They've been using it for a year now. I talked to their head of performance. They said that it's been, one of the best things for their business. I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to tweak some of the copy. I'm going to tweak the design so it matches my brand, and it's going to win. Unfortunately, there's so much more involved, right? Unfortunately, your customers are probably pretty different. Unfortunately, the way that you communicate about your brand, your products, your services, probably pretty different. However you have all of your acquisition channels set up, again, unless they are carbon copies of this other company that you know how the landing page is performing, it's not going to be a one-to-one. So can you get there? Can you use them for inspiration? Sure. But don't fall into the myth that oh, this worked for them, so it's going to work for me. Now let's get into the fun stuff, the do's. All right, there's just one do though. So what you should do right now is, it is October. Use this time before Black Friday and Cyber Monday to create and test powerful stories on landing pages that will ramp performance and ride through the holidays. If you can get them to work well in the holidays, and if you can really nail that storytelling, more than likely you're going to be able to do that later throughout the year, right? If you can cut through the noise now, you can cut through the noise later. And I'm going to get to why and all that good stuff. But use this time. If anyone says it's too late, you're very close. You're very close to that time where it's too late, but you have time. So use today's chat to go and test and build powerful stories that are going to ramp performance. All right. So why does storytelling matter for my landing page? So like I just said, the holidays, we're getting there. It's getting to that point where people are going to be spending money. It's an exciting time of year. Here's how you need to think about it. Spending money is an emotional decision. It always is. Yes, there's a logical side of it involved. Yes, people need to use rationale to say, okay, is this worth $20? Is it worth $80? Is it worth $500? But the main driver is how people feel about purchasing your product. Right? If they feel good about it, if they feel like it's going to make a difference for them, that is what convinces them to buy. The logical pieces, the specs, all of that stuff, yeah, it's a factor, but that's not what takes people from, is this right for me, to, wow, I need this. I need this yesterday. During Black Friday, Cyber Monday, it's even less about logic because people are buying anyways, right? The intent to buy for everyone during Black Friday, Cyber Monday is high because in some cases they just have to, right? I just have to get my shopping done. So that being said, it's even more about emotion because there's so many options out there. They're being pushed right and left in their face for the next couple of months. And not only that, but rationale is also at a all-time high because, again, I have to buy. It's the holidays. And look at these prices. You're getting sales, they're getting discounts, they're getting all of these awesome offers. So now is the time that you have to stand out from the crowd and you have to make them feel like what you're selling, excuse me, what you're selling is truly special, right? You have to make them feel that. So if you can get into their hearts and their minds, just like creative strategy is so important with advertising, it's exactly the same concept. You need to apply those types of learnings, those types of thought processes into your landing pages. So how do you do that? Customer research. You got to start with customer research, right? One of my favorite things that I've read from the great David Ogilvy is, I'm going to paraphrase, but he basically said, it absolutely sucks to spend weeks and weeks and weeks doing the research, but you're never going to be great. You're never going to create a truly perfect, not maybe perfect, a truly magnificent piece of advertising if you don't spend 3 weeks doing the research to create something that might only take you a week to actually build, right? So he's probably much more well-spoken than what I just said, but what that means is it's not always fun, right? It's not always just, oh, let me go in and have this great creative streak and let me just throw all these ideas at a wall and see what feels right to me. Instead, you got to start with true research. There's no great book has ever been written without good research. And same thing for you. There's not going to be a fantastic acquisition journey without great research into who you're speaking to, right? So customer audience research is extremely important. What's important to them? What do their lives look like? Why are they interested in the first place in your product, right? What has happened in the past? So look at your past performance, the ad creatives, the angles, all of that good stuff. What is it about this static image that's drawing people in? Is the way that the product looks? Is the way that the people look who are holding the product? Maybe it's a video, right? How is that video communicating? What is it communicating? Is there a certain way that it's making them feel? Are there certain benefits to their life that are really sticking out that is likely the reason people are clicking on this, great. What else do they need to know? How else do we reinforce that? So research that. On-site behavioral research, this is extremely important. You're going to want to know what people are doing on your site. And if you're already using landing pages, what are they already doing on landing pages? What is that information that they're showing you means a lot to them? Where are they clicking? What paragraphs of content are they reading on your site? What images are they scrolling through in the product carousels? What FAQs are they reading? Even more, what are the questions they're submitting to your little chatbot? What are the questions they're submitting to your customer service team? All of this is so integral to how you build your journeys for your customers, because you need to understand them in order to give them something that is going to make them feel like, yeah, that's exactly what I need. I need it now. Take my credit card. And then competitor research, right? And when I say competitor research, I don't mean go steal their landing pages. I don't mean go duplicate exactly what they're doing. I think I've made that clear at this point. What I do mean is go check out, is there anything that they're doing particularly well? Read their reviews. If you haven't tried their product, or even if you have, read the reviews. What do people love about your competitors? But even more, what do they hate? Are there certain elements of your competitors' offering that is just falling flat and people are noticing it, they're mentioning it, they're complaining about it? How does your product stack up against that? Is that something that you should be using? Should you say, hey, you know what? Everyone says that this brand, the product falls apart after 6 months. I know that ours is way more durable. Here are the materials that we use. It easily lasts people a year. That doesn't mean you have to put those people on blast, but that's really good information that you need to put into your landing page. That's going to be important to convince people that, I'm not scared, right? I'm not scared to make this journey. I'm not scared to make this purchase and give my credit card, because they know that I've been really nervous about the durability, and they just said, hey, this is great. Perfect. So all these little pieces of information that you can discover, that you can uncover from your own site, from competitor sites, from research into your audience. One thing that we love to do is go deep into Reddit and any other like forums online, any groups, any sort of online communities, and see if people are talking about your brand or your competitors, or even just your niche, right? Maybe if you're in the cooking space, how do people choose how to purchase their knives? What do they ask each other? What are they nervous about? Take all of this information and use that as you craft your landing page journey. All right, so then what are you going to use to gather some of this information? Obviously, reviews are pretty simple, right? I just talked about Reddit. Core is another great one for an online community. Reviews, you don't really need a tool necessarily to do that, although for competitors, you can't necessarily download their reviews, but you could copy and paste a ton of them, and then you can use ChatGPT to parse through them and give you some summaries, right? For your own reviews, you can do the same thing, but you can download them typically, depending on what app you're using. Download your reviews, put them into ChatGPT, ask ChatGPT to give you a summary of what people like, what people don't like, what are the common themes, any common phrases, even is there certain words, and like I just said, phrases that people are using often? If so, you might want to match that on your landing page, right? You want to try to be in their brains, frankly. So if there's certain ways that people speak, if there's certain phrases or words that people are using over and over again, use those in the landing page, because that makes them feel closer to you, or makes you feel, it makes them feel like you really understand them, how they think, what they're worried about, the way that they speak. Other tools to get great information. So Microsoft Clarity, there's a lot of different platforms out there, but Microsoft Clarity is great because it's free. If you want to get a lot more kind of detailed, if you want to get a lot more just metrics, I like Mouseflow as well. But if you're not that sophisticated with session recordings, click maps, funnels, analysis, that type of thing, Clarity is fantastic because you can get a lot of data and it's free. So you're going to use click maps. Click maps are going to tell you where people are interacting. So again, this is part of that research phase. What are people already doing on your site? So as you're building your landing page for X product, What do people care about? Are people looking a lot at the, again, like I said, the carousel of photos? Which photos are they looking at? Maybe those are things that you need to bring in to your landing page. Are people clicking a lot on, maybe it's a supplement, the nutrition label? Are they clicking a lot on the ingredients label? Okay, you need to talk more about that, right? Are there other FAQs, that type of thing? I mentioned those, so you're gonna get that information from Clarity. Session recordings are your best friend. They're certainly my best friend. Session recordings are recordings of people literally going through your website and what they're doing once they enter. This is such a great bridge between quantitative data and qualitative data, like click maps and scroll maps, because it gives you the full picture. So you might know, hey, we have a lot of people who are landing on our product pages, but not very many of them are adding to cart, and we don't know why. And then you look at your click map and you say, okay, people are clicking on the carousel and they're clicking on, maybe this little modal that we have with a pop-up, and they're clicking on the sizing chart, but why aren't they purchasing? Why aren't they adding to cart? Session recordings are probably going to give you a lot of that blank space. It's going to fill in a lot of that gap. So, hey, you know what? What we're noticing is as people are entering the page, and yeah, they're clicking on the carousel and they're not adding to cart, but they're scrolling down, and then they're scrolling up, and they're scrolling down, and then they're scrolling up again. What could that mean? Oftentimes something like that means they're confused and they're not finding information they need, right? Or, wow, we have tons of people scrolling through, our sizing chart. And then as soon as they look at that sizing chart, they leave. That's probably a good indicator that sizing is really important and they're really confused and you have to revamp that or make it more clear, right? Other things that session recordings are going to be able to show you are just, are there any bugs? Are there any issues that maybe you hadn't seen before? Are there paths? Are there other pages that people are visiting that you're not really sure what they're doing there? There you go. You'll find out. And then scroll maps. So these are good indicators kind of how much content people are seeing and then knowing what they might be missing. So everyone's hitting this landing page. They're only really getting to the hero section and the next section down. So no one's seeing, the section about our guarantee. No one's seeing the story behind why this is, so special and all the work and all the quality that we put into it. Could that be a problem? Maybe. Okay, so how do we get them to scroll further down so they can get this content? They can really understand everything that goes into it and the importance of this to their lives. So scroll maps are another piece that fill in that puzzle. All right, then you're going to use GA4 as well. So one of my favorite things in GA4 is navigation paths. What navigation paths allow you to do is understand where people are going before and after they enter certain pages. So this is extremely interesting just to figure out, what their path might look like or what their journey through your website is. So for example, if tons of people are entering through your homepage, where are most of them going next? Is there a collections page that most of them are going to? Is there a product page that most of them are going to? And then what happens from there, right? And same thing. So you can do that for all of your core pages. And it's really good to understand, are people progressing further, to your site and towards checkout? Are people kind of going backwards? Are people going back and forth? Are people just leaving on certain pages? That's going to be a really nice kind of map of how people are navigating through your website and what might be confusing and what might be interesting. All of these, there's a lot of little pieces of information I'm mentioning. All of these are so important into crafting that perfect story for your user. So try to have a good understanding of where people are going, why they might be going back and forth, and how you want them to go so that you can build that perfect experience into your landing page. Conversion funnel progression, very similar. The difference here is basically what's your drop off look like at every step of your funnel. So when people view your product, what percentage of everyone that lands on your site actually gets to a product page and views a product? All right, then what percentage actually adds to cart? Then what percentage starts checkout? What percentage, makes it to step 2 in checkout if you have 2 steps in checkout? What percentage then completes checkout, right? So then you'll be able to identify where people are dropping off. And then you can start working backwards to say, okay, is it mostly that people aren't adding to cart at all That means you have a lot of work to do to get them more information. Again, your landing page is going to be awesome for that, right? There's a lot of info that people just don't understand because currently they're not even adding the product to their cart. Are a lot of people bouncing or leaving at checkout? It could be the same thing. A lot of people leave at checkout because they just didn't have enough information right before it. Or maybe they're nervous at that point. Maybe you don't have enough information on your warranties or your guarantees. Maybe they didn't see enough kind of, social proof to make them feel comfortable with it. You can solve that further up. But again, knowing these things are going to help you identify what needs to be included in your landing page. GA4 is also where we're going to see your bounce rate, your add to cart rate, what I just said. And then, of course, in order to measure performance, you're going to be able to see your conversion rate, your average order value, your revenue per visitor as well, maybe as well as your profit per visitor. If you don't have that set up in Google Analytics, you can also just do that manually. So you take your COGS, subtract them, and that gives you your profit per visitor. That's my favorite North Star metric because at the end of the day, you want to know what your profit is. You want to know what your margin is. So profit per visitor is a fantastic North Star metric for measuring landing page success. But profit per visitor works, or revenue per visitor works as well. Okay, so now I've given you kind of a million little pieces of information. So, you take all these steps and you have this document and you have all this stuff in there. What are you going to do with it? So first, you're going to prioritize a lot of that, right? And if you've done all that research, that's not going to take you a lot of time. You're going to understand what's most important just by doing that research process. What comes up most often, right? What are the things people are talking about the most in reviews and in online communities? What are the things that people are interacting with the most? What are the comments that we're seeing the most on our ads? And what are the questions we're getting the most on customer support? You'll then be able to kind of quantify those and say, okay, from most important to least important, what is the order of that general information? And then you're going to build your story. So what frameworks should I use to build my story? I've been seeing a lot over the last maybe year or two that, these old school frameworks that people have talked about are dead, like AIDA, which is awareness, interest, desire, action. People are saying that's dead. People are saying PAS, which is problem, agitation, solution. They've been saying that's dead. I could not disagree more, right? Because that's just human nature. That is just user psychology. That is how you tell a story. You just have to do it well for it to work. So how do you use these frameworks? Again, to back up, take all that information, take all of that kind of hierarchy, that prioritization, and then you're going to start building that story based on whatever they're seeing before that. So for example, there's an ad. That ad has a primary message, like this is going to help you keep hydrated. It's going to make your skin better. You're going to feel like you have tons of energy. Great. So then you're going to click on that ad. They're going to land on a landing page. And the job of that landing page is to now take them through that journey of reinforcing the message they just saw and then covering all of this information that you know is important to them because of the research you just did, in doing it in a way that is compelling, that feels to them like you really know what you're talking about and you really understand them and that you're going to solve this. You're going to deliver on that promise that you started in the ads. So I really like problem agitation solution. That's one that we use a lot. And the reason for that and the reason it works well for a lot of brands is because a lot of products are solving real problems. And so if again, I'm kind of using some random supplement as my example. So they see that ad promising energy and hydration and things like that. Then they land on this page. So a problem, maybe you saw in a lot of your research that people were mentioning, oh my God, my skin was so dry before. And I felt like I was going to fall asleep by 1:00 every day. But I started using this and I feel brand new. I don't get that crash, and my skin looks more glowy and dewy than ever. Okay, and you see that a lot, so you prioritize that in your research, and you say, okay, that's important. What do you do? Well, you build that story. So your story is going to start with a problem, and you're going to use better copywriting skills than what I'm going to just make up right now on the fly. But that problem might be something like sick of flaky skin and falling asleep at 1 p.m. Again, that's bad, but you get what I'm saying. All right, so you're presenting the problem, and then you're going to use copy, you're going to use design to show them what might be going on. You're going to reinforce that they're in the right place, so you might show them the product, and then you're going to continue building on that, right? So you can still sprinkle in other elements like we talked about. If you saw your research and social proof is really important, then great. If you saw that you're going to add some review stars, you're going to add you saw that there's certain images that work really well, cool, you can put that in there. But you're starting off with a problem, and then you're probably going to add a little bit of copy saying, we've been there, or it's not too late to fix it. Think about it more, use your research, but I'm just making this up as an example. Then from there, the next step is agitation. So you're going to make them understand that you get them, right? I know how bad that sucks when your skin is so dry and it's itchy and it's embarrassing, and you don't look great in your photos, and you feel a little bit awkward because you have to put chapstick on every 5 seconds, whatever it might be. Build that story, make them feel like they're in it, right? Like, oh my God, that's me. How are they following me? How do they know this? Because they understand my problem. Awesome. So you're going to agitate that a little bit, right? Isn't it awkward when you're in a meeting at 1 o'clock and you can barely keep your eyes open, and your boss looks at you and you haven't been able to pay attention because you're just trying to stay awake, right? So build that story. So you started with the problem and they relate to it, and they know they're in the right place because you've added elements, from the messaging that you had before, and you've added elements of the product and things that they care about. Then you agitate it to make them feel like, oh my God, wow, yeah, that is me. I think I need this, right? And then you introduce a solution, right? Here's who we are. Here's what we have for you. Here's what you're going to get and how it's going to benefit your life. And with that story, you're going to continue it. And then you're going to continue to reinforce it through all these other points that you have gathered that are important to people. So again, maybe you're going to insert some testimonials that you've hand selected that reinforce, the solution right there, that reinforce the main themes that you saw in those reviews. Maybe then what happens next? What do they need to get after they've gotten that social proof and validation? Oh, wow, in my research, a lot of people were wondering, how does it work? Oh, that's really high on this prioritization list I have in my research. Okay, let's add a how it works section, right? So that is really, in a sort of simple way, how you blend those two things together. You start with that research, you figure out what's most important, you figure out how to communicate that, how to tie it into the story and kind of that initial messaging people are getting. And then you put it together in a cohesive, again, story, right? You tell them, this is the journey. You clicked on this, and then we told you, we understand you. This is a real problem. We know how much it sucks. This is really difficult, but don't worry. We have your back, and this is why. And then you build in all those other important pieces of information that are critical to these customers before they can purchase. And you continue that story throughout the page. All right, so how do you continue to refine and optimize after you launch? So one thing I'm going to note is when you're doing that process of putting that together, right? When you're slotting in these key pieces of information from your data, when you're reading through it to say, okay, does this feel like a true story? So as people are clicking on this ad and then they read, through all of these things, does this feel cohesive? Don't be afraid to reread this page and actually go through that flow, pretend you're going through that flow a dozen times, right? Does it answer everyone's burning questions? Does it make sense if they see this ad and this is the journey they're going through? Do that repetitively. Empathy is a extremely strong skill set. It's extremely important skill set to have in growth marketing. And the more that you can put yourself in their shoes and go through this entire flow and understand if it makes sense, the better off you're going to be. One last thing I'm going to actually go into and before I talk about refining and optimizing is don't stress too much about length, right? When it comes to a story, as long as that story is good, as long as it is strong, as long as that content is actually hitting on the things that people care about, don't stress too much about length. That is why you're using hierarchy and prioritization. A lot of people who are going to buy, they're the ones who do make it deeper into the page, right? A lot of people are like, but only 30% of people make it almost to the end of my page. You don't have a 30% conversion rate, right? So probably a subset of those people, in a lot of cases, the subset of the people who are really digging in, those are the ones who convert. But you still want to build it for everyone. You want to build it for the skimmers. So you still want to start with that, most important information that you figured out in your research at the top. And then you also want to build it for the people who, are in between. They skim, but they also read a little bit. So you want to make sure your headlines are very strong. And so people could almost understand the story if they were just reading the headlines only. And then you also, of course, want to optimize for the people who read every word. And so if they do read every word, it is a cohesive story. It doesn't feel like it's too much. It doesn't feel like it's too little. It hits all those points that you know are important to them, but it feels really compelling from both a logical standpoint, but mostly an emotional standpoint, like I said at the beginning. Once you have that, then you're going to launch. You're going to test it. So how do I refine and keep optimizing after launch? You are going to want to basically spend the same process that you did before you launched to optimize. So, if you test it and you say, okay, you know what, I'm going to test this new landing page I just built against the product page I've used for so long. Great. That's a fantastic first test. You test it, you A/B test it, you use something like IntelliGems, and, you let the traffic go 50-50 to each page. You let it run for those 2 weeks, and, the landing page doesn't work. It doesn't win. That doesn't mean it doesn't work, right? Don't throw it away if it doesn't win the first time. That's just not the nature of really anything in performance marketing, right? It's possible, probable even, that some fairly small updates are going to get that from maybe not winning the first time to winning big the next time. So how do you figure out what's going on? Again, like I said, use that same process. Session recordings are your best friend. Figure out where people are getting stuck. Figure out what people are skipping. Figure out what people are spending time on. Figure out if maybe there's some issues with even just loading. Are there speed issues? Are there carousels? Is there information that's being hidden unnecessarily? Do that same analysis process on that landing page. And that's going to uncover friction points and opportunities and all the good stuff that you need to make that page perform. Same thing with GA4, right? You're going to want to understand where people are clicking. Are there things that they should be clicking and they're not? Are there quantitative pieces of information like, oh my God, we're not even like allowing them to see the nutrition label. Oops, right? Or they're not even making it to the part of the page that we know that's important. And people who do make it that far, they're converting. Okay, that might be a really easy fix. You just move that section up further and test again, right? So there's a lot of that same process that you're going to use in optimizing your brand new landing page. Make sure that it keeps making sense. Keep going through it. Keep making sure that the story that you're telling is compelling. If you test it and you figure out, you know what, sometimes it's just the headline also. I'll make that point. It might just be that the story you're telling isn't the right story. It's just like anything else. So test big changes in your story. Even if it's the same ad, maybe you went to that problem, agitation, solution route. You tried it, you optimized a few times, and it's just not catching. Okay, what could be different, right? Is there a different story we could tell? Maybe there's a huge elephant in the room. Maybe there's one major question that everyone asks, like, couldn't I just buy X instead? Right? We've seen that. We worked on these. And sometimes that's the angle that you talk about. You bust a myth. Okay, that's a whole new story to tell. But you've already done the research, so it's going to be an easier and faster story to test out. But keep going with that process. If you do it, I promise you are going to find landing pages, journeys that are going to convert at an extremely high level, and it turns into a win-win-win situation. Your customers win because they believe in you, they get to know you, they understand that you really get them and you want to help, and they get the product at the end of the day. You win because you can reach more people. You can convert people at a lower cost because they're interacting so much more and they're converting so much more, right? And your team wins because they get to understand the customers. They get to understand how they can keep repeating this process, how they can really kind of expand your cohorts and your growth by figuring out how to tell stories to different people within your audience. And that's all I got today. So I will open it up for any questions.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you so much. That was fantastic. A lot of really great, amazing tips and tricks. So thank you for that. Looks like we did have some questions from the audience, so I'm going to pull it up here. I know the first question that came in, you mentioned how important it is, right, to spend those 3 weeks to do research, right, which I know is definitely a luxury, right, to get those 3 weeks, especially holidays is right around the corner. I mean, it is coming quick. So how do you recommend, customers start performing customer research? Like, what are some go-to tips you have?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say that you have to spend the 3 weeks, right? That was just David Ogilvy's, little quote that I really appreciate, that it can take you 3 times as long to do the research as actually build out the page. But in terms of research, if you have the time to do it, you can get this done in, frankly, a few days if you spend most of your day on it. What I would prioritize is, again, video recordings. Like, there's a reason that I talk about those so much. They are gold mines of information. So if you have 2 hours and that's it this week, spend 1 hour of that watching video recordings straight for that hour. You can, I often tell people, take your computer, plug it into your TV, go get comfortable, and then get a notepad, write down what actions you're seeing over and over again. And then you're going to start seeing the same things. So tally what you're seeing over and over again. And then at the end of that hour, you're going to have a quantifiable list. You're going to have, hey, we have 15 people doing this, 7 people doing this, 8 people doing this. Here's what the issues could be based on those. Here's how we fix them. And here's how we insert them into our landing pages. So video session recordings are huge. What else to do? I covered a lot, obviously, in this, but go through your site again, look at the click maps, see what people are interacting with, go through and do review mining. What do people love about your product? What are those main themes and messages that keep popping up? And then last thing I would say for prioritization there, talk to your customer service team, see if there's any questions and issues that they bring up or that they're receiving a whole lot. And same thing with your ads team. See if there's a lot of comments, even if they're nasty, negative comments. What are they getting a lot of? Because sometimes you just hit that right on the head, straight on, and people respect it, right? We've used that sometimes as the headline of our landing pages, right? There's almost every customer would leave the same thing. Can't we just do this instead? The headline was, here's why you can't do this instead. And that landing page is fantastic.
I love what you mentioned, right? Of not only reading the comments of your customers, but going to your competitors and reading those comments, the good and the bad. I thought that was a really great tip.
For sure.
Okay, another question here from Gregory. Should landing pages only be used during sales and holidays?
No. The landing pages are fantastic for cutting through the noise, and that's why I absolutely recommend doing them for Black Friday, Cyber Monday. And if you can crack the code, I think we have 6 weeks or so before Black Friday, Cyber Monday. If you can crack that code in the next 6 weeks, you are going to substantially boost your sales for the holidays. But the reason that I'm so bought into storytelling is if you can cut through the noise right now in the holidays, you can absolutely cut through the noise evergreen during the rest of the year. So landing pages are not only a tool for holidays and sales, they are more of an application for holidays and sales, but they are a fantastic evergreen all the time growth solution for sure.
Okay, great. I know there was a question that I had, and I'm just curious. I mean, what would you say, the number one mistake that you see your customers make with landing pages, if you had to say?
It's just kind of using templates, right? It's just plugging things in and not spending the time to understand what exactly do we need our customers to know and how do we need to make them feel, right? There's a lot of people who will just see what's out there and they'll say, okay, I just need to put some testimonials here and I'll just take a video and put it here. And then I want some lifestyle images and this looks really pretty. Let's do it, right? And so there's not really a strategy behind it. The reason that I don't know if you've heard this, a lot of people bring it up and they say, yeah, everyone says that ugly landing pages or ugly websites, they convert way higher than pretty ones. That's not true.
Yeah,
But
who's saying that?
a lot of people, right? It's one of those things. It's like one of those common. I don't even know if it's a myth, but it is something that people mention quite a bit, because you'll see these like horrendous looking pages sometimes, and they convert way better than these like really pretty pages. And the reason is not the design, right? People aren't like, wow, I love the ugly one. The reason is because typically in those situations, there's a lot more thought into the content and the messaging
Yes,
on the ugly page, and the design kind of falls to the side. That doesn't mean the design should fall to the side. If you can do both, you're going to crush it. Usually on the design, like the ones that are designed really well, but they're not converting that well, they went the opposite route. They made something that looks beautiful, but they didn't put thought into the strategy and the messaging and the story behind it. And so when you do that, there's no heart, there's no emotion. People aren't going to be compelled to buy because it just looks good, right? It's, at the end of the day, it's kind of just art. People need to buy.
Yes, yes. That is true. Another question I had, okay, so obviously with holiday, that is the period of time, but for any like evergreen landing page, when you're collecting data and you're collecting data around the performance of the landing page, right? You're tracking where people are clicking, et cetera, et cetera. How often should you be kind of reevaluating your landing pages or updating them based on, maybe what's trending with your customers?
Yeah, it's a super, super good question. So one thing, there's a lot of different ways that you can explore landing pages and expand on them. So what I say is, first, try to categorize in a way your different campaigns, right? So I know we have a skincare brand here. I'm just going to pretend a skincare brand as an example. So say that you have some campaigns in your paid ads that are talking about, anti-aging, right? And that's the main message that's happening there. So your goal is going to be first to figure out a message or a landing page that is going to be focused fully on that anti-aging story, right? And maybe that problem agitation solution framework that I mentioned is going to be perfect for that. Then you might have other campaigns, right? So you might have another one that's talking about like oil. Maybe you have really, an oily skin and you have big pores. Okay, so then you're going to try to find a landing page to do that. Say that now you have all these different campaigns and you have landing pages for all of them. Then you're going to start optimizing, typically starting with the highest opportunity page, meaning whichever one is kind of your biggest revenue driver, you want to start trying to optimize against that. So using that process I mentioned at the end, analyze it, see what's working, what's not, launch a V2 and optimize against that. How often you need to do it? Typically, these landing pages, once they're really performing, these can last for 6 months, a year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
They have a very, once they're strong and once you've tested them to see if you can, a lot of times people will beat it. We have kind of like a 3 strikes and you're out type of rule. So we'll try to optimize 3 times. If we can't beat that again, and the winner that we had originally continues to be the winner, great. Let's keep riding that out as long as we can. And a lot of times these can last for super, super, super long time. It's not like ads where the shelf life can be pretty short. Otherwise, it's kind of as you need to, right? So you start seeing the decline in performance. You start seeing that, it's just not hitting as well anymore. Okay, now is a good time to refresh, but it typically falls in line with ad refreshments, right? Or like email refreshments. Something's changing anyways, so you change the landing page too.
Gotcha. And I know you mentioned customers should be testing landing pages right now for Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Is that kind of the recommended timeline that you typically give?
I typically say start in July.
July. Okay. Yes.
Christmas, exactly. Christmas
next year. Next year.
But you do have time. I would tell you very honestly, every year for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, I'm sharing some sort of information. Usually it's later than this, and usually it's like early November. And people are like, hey, do you have some tips that you can share? And I say, at this point, it's just making sure nothing's broken, right? Gotcha. So you can still use a lot of this research to make sure nothing's broken. But right now, October 9th, you have time. You can spend the next week doing research, spend another week creating it, launch it. You have time for 1 to 2 tests. If you're high volume, so if you're having, 20, 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 users coming in through those channels for your dedicated landing page, you might be able to get even 2 tests done between now and Black Friday starting. Okay. So higher volume is going to be easier if you can.
We had 2 questions in the audience. One person asks, will we receive these slides? And then I know another person asks if you had any examples of landing pages. And so if customers, or I'm sorry, if the audience would love to get a hold of you for this information, what's the best way they can reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I should have put up that slide at the end, which is if you want to learn more.
There we go. There, yes.
If you want to learn more, couple of things, you can reach out directly to me, Kanika at betabetagrowth.com. If you do mention this webinar, we'll get you an exclusive discount if you do want to work with us. Otherwise, if you just have questions, feel free to find me on Twitter. I should have put this on this slide, but I forgot to. My Twitter is at Kanika, so Kanika _Misra, my last name, Misra. And I can help you get some landing page examples. I can help answer some questions. And if you want to get those slides, I'm happy to share as well.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for this. And again, thank you so much for your time today and your expertise. A lot of really fantastic tips and tricks. So yes, if you want to get a hold of her, please reach out via this email. But thanks again. All right. I think that wraps our webinar. So thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.